The following episode will contain spoilers. You have been warned.
You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? When the humans are away, or in this case dead, the animals will play. But here, pigs prove that superior intelligence doesn't necessarily mean superior morals, as Amber and Scott discuss Animal Farm. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
What would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
So I had been looking forward to this movie for quite a while. I actually enjoy Orwell stuff. And I think I really mostly wanted to see how bad they were going to bastardize it. And I got my answer pretty badly.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of object to the word badly. Did they bastardize it? I think that's a yes or no question. Yeah, they did.
Oh, I mean, well, yes, maybe they bastardized it fine, but it was definitely heavily bastardized.
Yeah, and maybe that is because this is kind of a weird film. On one hand, it is a very high-level topic if you know the story of Animal Farm. However, it's in a cartoon form. So actually the messaging for that is really confusing. So is it a kid's film with a high-level topic, or is it a high-level topic that kids are going to come to and shouldn't come to?
Yeah, they successfully made this a movie that both completely disregarded like the entire message that Orwell was trying to send and have it not be a kid's movie at the same time.
So there was a row of kids in front of us at this film who all had glow sticks.
Yeah. What would you do? I would never let my kids come to a movie with glow sticks.
That was kind of obnoxious because every kid in front of us had a glow stick and a glow necklace that they were all holding and flinging around.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I eventually got the adult to round those up.
Yeah. I'm glad he was receptive to that. So I was initially confused and I thought, are kids going to get this? But they, as you said, bastardized it enough where it's fine as a kid's film. Because you have the pigs getting sports cars and going to the mall and getting electronics. And it's mostly keeping in the spirit of the original film, but heaven help those who have not read the book Animal Farm, and this is their first exposure to it. Because Orwell is such an iconic author, and so many authors from that time period wrote really compelling books. And if you don't know the story and this is your introduction to it, that's really kind of a travesty.
Yeah, they're using the same name as the book, but it's not. It's not the same story. There are similarities.
Yeah, they use the rules, which are foundational to Animal Farm, of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, all animals are equal, don't drink the what is the juice? The bad juice, which is wine. And they still keep that as the guardrails for the film. And Napoleon and Snowball going off the rails thinking that they can break the rules and it's okay. And also how the pigs get power hungry and much to the detriment of the other animals on the farm.
Do you know who Lucky was in the book?
I don't.
He wasn't.
Well, see, that's the thing, is when I was like, Lucky, there is no Lucky. And I'm like, okay, so they're adding a character here to add dimension for people who aren't familiar with it.
They added a character to add moral compass.
Yeah.
To it, which is...
Yeah, when you said, do you know who he was, I was thinking, did they change a name? And I was like, no, he had to have been a brand new character because there was definitely no Lucky.
Yeah, because, exactly, there was no real moral compass in the original book.
Yeah, and for those who have seen the film or are going to see the film, Lucky is a pig. And he is the one that has good relationships with everyone on the farm, but then also gets pulled into pigs are better, pigs hang out with pigs, come stay in the house. That was another one of the rules, is that animals don't live in the house, but the pigs moved into the house much like the original book. But Lucky is torn because he doesn't want to separate himself from the other animals, but he's also grateful to Napoleon, who got him off the slaughterhouse truck when the farm was foreclosed on. So, yeah, you're right. He is the moral compass who can bounce back and forth between the two factions of the pigs, who are growing more confident in their power, and the rest of the animals who are initially going along, and then because they go along, they're in a very bad state with no say, no food, no rights.
I mean, this is interesting because we do the what would you do? And I love doing that, but I feel like this episode's going to be a little off of that because Scott does like to talk politics.
Okay, well, let's start off with the what would you do. So the farm that they all live in is foreclosed on because the farmer has not been feeding them for a while and hasn't paid the mortgage for a while, and the bank comes to put this property's for sale, and a truck pulls up that initially the door's closed, and the animals, one who reads, who is lucky, thinks it says Laughter House. And they're like, that sounds nice. Let's go on a vacation to Laughter House. And the doors get closed, and we see that there's an S missing. So a very happy place called Laughter House now turns into a slaughterhouse. And that's not a good place.
Yeah, I don't think any truck should actually have the words slaughterhouse written across the side of it. I'm not sure I've ever seen that.
Well, so what would you do if you owned a slaughterhouse? You wouldn't put it on the trucks?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't.
You would actually be probably like everybody else in the slaughterhouse industry who paints pictures of happy animals on the side of it and some sort of marketing slogan that makes it seem like animals are happy to be murdered for your burger or your dinner.
I mean, I wouldn't put
Happy farms.
I wouldn't put out a thing that basically says I'm the murder mobile.
Yeah. Basically, those kinds of industries definitely have feel-good names to them, or at least ambiguous names that sound wholesome or something. So what would you do if this truck pulled up and you were hungry and it seemed like, okay, well, they're going to take you someplace nice?
I mean, I could think.
Yeah.
And yeah, if they're just rounding everyone up in a situation like this, no, there's...
Well, and it's funny, that goes to the nature of animals because animals are trusting. They do trust us, and that's why it's such a travesty and just such a crime when humans betray that trust.
Yeah, if it's boys and girls, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is.
So ultimately, they get off the truck, they commandeer ownership of the farm, and they realize through the next visit of the banker that they need magic paper, which is money, to keep the farm. So they sell eggs and milk and horse rides, and they come up with the money to keep the farm, but there's extra money.
I was at least okay with the fact that the animals were getting paid.
They were deciding,
for the animals being ridden and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it was being done for the animals, not for the humans. Like, it's okay to ride as long as it's the pigs having you ride.
Yeah, every animal there was willingly participating in the process, unlike real life, where the animals are just objects in use for humans. So,
yeah, and it should be very well noted that the early part of this movie, here after they get rid of the humans, boys and girls, this is what's known as communism. That's communism.
Getting rid of the humans?
Well, no, it's just the animals, everyone's equal, and we're going to govern all together, and that's communism. And
darn commie animals.
Well, this continues to explain why communism fails.
Yeah, because ultimately people do step up to lead.
People want more.
Well, and that's the thing is, it's nice in theory to say everyone has an equal voice, but if everyone's just being polite, saying, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Consensus can only work for so long until someone does need to provide some guidance and make some decisions. And that's where it gets tricky. And in this case, we saw that because there were people or animals there, like the sheep, who just go along and they're followers. And the notion of people being called sheep is because they're followers. They're not independent thinkers. They don't take actions on their own. They don't push back. They just go along and go with the flow. And there will always be people like that. And in that situation, they're not going to step up to be leaders. They're not going to advocate for why this is a good idea or say that's a bad idea. And this is the opportunity that the pigs had for Snowball and then later Napoleon to step up into a leadership role.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Snowball and even communism in general, because she was kind of like the face of communism.
Yeah, little commie porker.
Is that they have good intentions. Like, outwardly, they have good intentions. They just have these intentions in such a utopian way of thinking that is just incongruent with how the real world works. And that's why it fails. Like, yeah, her things would have been great if you get 100% buy-in.
Well, and that's where the first problem actually materializes, because she doesn't want buy-in. She doesn't want consensus. She wants to build a water wheel so they can create power. And she says, yeah, we don't need to tell everybody. We'll tell them when it's done and why it's good for them. We don't need to confer with them. We don't need to involve them. Let's just do this.
And that represents the party.
Yeah.
In communism. Like, they're doing what they think is right, but it leads to so much stuff that to be able to maintain control, you end up having to shut down those people who are wanting more.
It's a delicate balance, because even I look in local government and they take surveys, they have town halls, they collect information and feedback and community input. But at the end of the day, someone's going to collect all of that. They're going to take it into consideration. And
maybe
one person or a small group of people are going to decide what they think is best.
Yeah, sometimes you do stuff like that purely for optics.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to ask you what you're thinking. We don't care.
Yeah.
But we're going to ask you.
Yeah, because you need to, especially when it comes to community things. And Animal Farm was certainly a community. And when you get to the point where we're not even going to go through the facade of asking you what you think, we're just going to execute and do it. And that's where things started to go off the rails.
Yeah. Yes. And communism often fails slowly. It's not just necessarily a revolution. Like, it is the revolution ruling, and which is more almost anarchist to a point, and it's just not a system that works. You can't trust everyone to rule themselves.
And people are people, and they are I'm sorry?
Or pigs.
Yes.
People are people or pigs.
And they can be manipulative. They can be self-serving. They can be dishonest. And in theory, it's nice to say we're all equal. And if everyone truly believes that and abides by that, that's great. Maybe that's where you have your commune and, everyone gets along and supports each other. And that notion is amazing. But it takes a certain kind of person or pig to agree to that and actually have it be part of their fiber, part of their character and who they are, that they can fall in line with the greater good and the group without saying, how do I get ahead? How does this benefit me? How do I benefit?
And understand that Napoleon and Snowball are fine as long as you have both. You need each other to keep the other one in check. And that's why, like, we have a left party and a right party. We have Republicans and Democrats. Like, you need that other party to keep the majority party in check, or else it just devolves too deep down a rabbit hole.
And that's where third parties evolve from, is saying, well, I don't fit into the square peg or the round peg, that holes for the pegs, that I have a different opinion. So you can't lop anyone, whether pig or human, into one very specific way of being or another very specific way of being. And if you look at politics, I think we all make compromises. Is you can be a Democrat and you mostly believe with this, or you're a Republican and you mostly believe that. But I think realistically, there's always little pieces and parts that don't align, but you're buying into the bigger majority of what that party represents. Yeah,
you generally, describing people as Republicans or Democrats really just isn't fair for the most part. These parties are a bundle of values, and you're basically choosing which bundle you believe in more. But just because, like, if a party has 30 stances and you believe 28 of them, you're probably going to be with that party. But when it comes to those other two issues, okay, we may switch it up here.
So the overview of this film is obviously the animals come together, they work together as a community, then some of the pigs step up to assume leadership roles, the greater community suffers, and really the struggle of the majority of the animals losing their equity and the small majority of the pigs getting more powerful, more authoritative, and changing the rules, much to the detriment of Animal Farm. And it's kind of funny. I'm not a fan of the term gaslighting. I understand the behavior and what it means and whatnot, but I think it's one of those words that's used too much and frequently used incorrectly. However, in the course of this film, I felt like Napoleon was absolutely gaslighting the animals because he would change the rules. And one of the sheep was like, I could have sworn it said this recently. And he's like, nope, it's always said this. It's always said this.
Yeah, a lot of these themes appearing in 1984 of this is the way it is, this is the way it's always been, even
Right.
when it changes.
Oh, so many of those authors were so forward thinking. I think about films like 1984 and Fahrenheit 451?
451.
And Soylent Green, and they were so ahead of their time because, or even what is that one film? Oh, Clockwork Orange. That was about home invasions before that was ever anything that, as a community, we ever thought about. And these notions that are in some of these books that are 70 years old, and seeing how forward-thinking some of these authors were, like George Orwell.
Yeah. So it was interesting as it transitioned because for a while there, everything was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, you've got the pigs that are ruling, okay? You need a ruling group. You do. You just need to be able to trust the people who are in that ruling group. And at first, I feel like there was that trust. Like they were making money, they were getting everything paid, they had extra, but it's the extra. The extra's the problem.
Well, and it's not just the extra, it's what the extra was. It was the extra money, and we all know what they say about money. So money corrupts, and that's exactly where things started to go off the rail in this film because they took that extra money and the pigs used it for themselves. They went to the mall, they got all kinds of gifts to enhance the house that they moved into, which they were not supposed to do because that was one of the rules. And instead of using that profit for everyone on Animal Farm, they used it for themselves. So what would you do? You have to keep the mission at heart because you all agreed on the mission, and you, whether you're a leader or not, you are still representative of holding what's good for the entire community. And that was the shift in the film, is once they took that profit of what was left of the magic paper and they used it exclusively for themselves, not even one gift for the community.
Well, and it's also the interesting part about when you start introducing corporate influences, which is what...
Darn malls.
What?
Darn malls.
Yeah, well, no, just who was the female?
Pinkerton or
Yeah.
Plimpington.
Like, that's what that represents, is that once you have power, people want that power, they want that influence, and they will try to buy it. And that's exactly what was going on there. And if you're the people in power, it's like when she wanted to come in and be a whole part of it.
Okay, so she being...
The Pinkerton person.
Well, yeah, and let's just explain that a little bit, because that is a deviation from the original film. Is there is the person that owns the slaughterhouse also wants the land so they can build a dam to create power. So not only did the original farmer default on the property, there's someone who wants the property, and the animals are in her way. So ultimately, Plimpington, she forms an alliance with Napoleon, who now is going by the "I'm cool and in charge and I'm Napopo."
Well, and at first Napoleon was like, yeah, like, I see your benefit here, but yeah, you're not gonna come in here and rule us. Like, we're still, like, we'll listen to you, but you don't control us. And that's a good way of government running. Like, let the corporations have influence. Let them discuss and say why certain things should or shouldn't happen. But in the end, still be able to make the best decisions for the farm or the country or whatever it is. But that's the thing, though. Those corporations have money, and they know that pretty much most everyone has a price.
Yeah, and Napopo absolutely did, and it was the red sports car, and she saw that, and she fed into that, and his ego of being in charge. And
yeah, she played off his inherent narcissism.
yeah, exactly. And ironic that even though as old as this film is, it feels very present day.
Oh, extremely.
Yeah.
So as the film progresses and more of the rules are being broken because the ruling class ends up saying, well, yeah, these rules are there for everyone else, but because we are who we are, we don't need to follow them.
Yeah. And we're going to drink the wine and live in the house and wear clothing and walk on 2 feet instead of 4. And this is how the people in power do it. So
And it became less about the party and more about the person. It put Napoleon in a idol type role where everyone's just looking up to him, and a number of sycophantic people are just like, whatever you say, you're always right. And you even still see the animals buying into it.
Well, and the manipulation of those animals, and one of them is Boxer, who is the horse, who is a hard worker and will do anything for Animal Farm. And unfortunately, that mentality is very much taken advantage of and manipulated. And Lucky, the pig in the movie, is sent out to win over Boxer because Boxer is increasingly discontent with things that are happening, and Napoleon sends Lucky out to convince Boxer to get on board because his influence matters. So what would you do if you were Lucky in that situation where you were still kind of straddling the fence, you were in the house, you were wearing the clothes, you were walking on fours, you were bought into what the pigs are doing, but Boxer's your best friend, and you were basically sent by Napopo to go manipulate your friend and get him in line.
Hence the moral compass.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, this is one of those situations you got to pick a side.
So what would you do? What side would you pick?
Because you know they're not going to let the horse in to the pig party.
Nope.
So no matter what, he's not going to be able to be brought up to the level. It's just a matter of, can you keep them working? Literally work them till they die.
And this is funny because this idea I'm going to bring up next is something you see recurring in so many TV shows, in so many films, of where you have two people and one is elevated. And it's usually popularity, not necessarily power, but power comes from popularity frequently. And the person who gets elevated into that clique, that power group, whatever, says, I'll change things from the inside. And that never works. So, even though that wasn't necessarily Lucky's intent, it's a dynamic we see a lot where people think that they're going to be the catalyst for change, but all they do is become a mirror of the environment they're in. And that's what was happening with Lucky. And he did go and get Boxer in line. So Boxer bought in and gave Napopo the support, which then made every other animal say, okay, we support you too, Napoleon.
Yeah. And one of the first things that Napopo, I can't call him that, Napoleon was doing there is he was segmenting out the animals. Pigs should be with pigs, horses should be with horses, chickens with chickens, because that's the playbook.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what playbook I'm talking about, boys and girls, that's where we call going from communism to fascism, where you feed on separating people. Because if people are separated, they are more divided and they are weaker. And they can't have as much influence or power to stop what you're doing.
Divide and conquer. Yeah, I mean, that's a phrase that we use as just a phrase, but if you actually think about what that means, that's exactly what this is. You cut off community, you cut off connection, you cut off communication, and then people start just saying, well, I need to work in my interests because I'm a cow or I'm a pig or I'm a horse or I'm a human or I'm black or I'm white or I'm American or I'm whatever. And yeah, that mentality winds up causing a lot of divisiveness.
Yeah, it is fueled by divisiveness to the point of hatred.
Yeah.
Like, I am who I am, and you've got to find a way to keep other groups somewhat aligned with your views, knowing you're going to lose some of them. But yeah, I mean, if you can't put together a rebellion because everyone's segmented, then you're fine. And that's where it eventually goes, is that, like, I mean, let's just call it what it is here. Napoleon is the government. He is
at certain times.
Der
I mean,
Führer.
our government and other countries' governments look different at different times with different leaderships. But yeah, it certainly can look like the government. Depends on the administration and the country and the time.
He surrounded himself with nothing but yes men. And if anyone even started to question it, like, Lucky, well, then maybe Lucky needed to go on vacation.
Yeah, they were threatened with banishment from Animal Farm.
And I wonder what government that looks like a lot right now. I don't know. The theoretical president of the United States who has his cabinet and he's happy with them at first, but as soon as the cabinet starts doing things that aren't in line with his views, they need to go on vacation.
So ultimately,
I should just be honest here. Like, this is a strong comparison in between the Trump first and second administration. Like, the first time, he actually brought decent people into the cabinet. Maybe not people I agreed with, but people that I felt in general were decent people and would do decent jobs as what they were. And as soon as Trump realized they weren't yes men, fired. The second time around, he was like, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm just going to completely surround myself with sycophants to begin with, which still doesn't necessarily work, but...
Okay, so politics aside...
Well, you can't say politics aside in this movie.
In real life, in this moment, not going down that rabbit hole here, going back to the movie here, ultimately, Lucky does join the greater group of animals and realizes he has made a mistake in being a disciple of Napopo and comes back to what's good for the community. And the animals ultimately end up reclaiming the farm and banishing Napoleon.
Just to make it real clear, and they touched on this, they touched on the real answer or the real story briefly when they were at the party, or
they had a celebration for the opening of the
they had the
completion of the dam.
They had the humans and the pigs in there, and Lucky was looking at pigs and seeing humans, and looking at humans and seeing pigs, and realizing that they were completely indistinguishable at that point. And that's basically how the book ends.
Right.
Them realizing we went from one oppressive regime to another oppressive regime. And
the film does go beyond that point, but also finishes with a little bit of ambiguity in the fact that Napoleon's been banished, Lucky has joined the greater community again, but the farm has been destroyed from fire and flood, and they are just on the hill where the farmhouse was.
I think I think Napoleon got banished underneath a grain silo that was underwater.
Yeah.
So I think he was banished.
Well, he was banished
from this mortal plane.
Yeah, and he definitely drowned before that banishment actually was
Because that's the thing. They were like, we need to tell him to leave.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
These people who get control will do anything to keep it.
Yeah.
And
at that point, he has connections. He has influence. He has power. So if he didn't want to leave, which he wouldn't have, you're right, he would have called in any of his power brokers now that he's made to still squash the influence of the greater community.
Yeah, and if I'm being frankly honest, that's why I'm scared as hell of 2028.
Okay. So
because they don't want to leave. They don't want to leave power, and he didn't. When they presented with leave, he's like, "No, I will crush you rather than leave, or at least attempt to crush you." And in the real world, he crushes. In this story, he gets crushed. But occasionally, like Hitler, eventually lost, and he shot himself in his bunker, and that's sadly the happy ending. Oh, we're not ending on Hitler.
I don't know where to go after that.
We're not ending.
I'm just looking at you.
We are not ending on Hitler.
I don't know where to go after that. So, final thoughts on Animal Farm?
It's got a good story. I just maybe wish they had used a different name and not.
But you couldn't have used the rules. The rules are foundational to the film Animal Farm. So
Oh, yeah, no, they are. You could have done it a different way. I just, and it's interesting because I actually did a little research on this because I was like, is there a movie that really truly holds to the Orwellian vision? And there were like 2 other movies made. One was a Muppet movie, which actually strays even further from it because, yeah, I guarantee you the Muppets are not ending in an Orwellian vision.
Kermomo.
Yeah, and the other one was a 1954 animated film, which kind of sort of ended the same way, but it was different because it was 1954 and it was funded by the CIA as basically a part of the Cold War.
Oh my gosh.
As showing how bad communism is. Like, so it strayed for other reasons. And that's just because Hollywood doesn't want to make the real movie because the real movie's a bummer. But you know what? It's a bummer you should know about so you don't repeat it.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe this just loops back to actually pick up a book and read it and see the author's original intent and don't always rely on Hollywood adaptations of films. Like, go and experience the author's real, authentic message in their real words and skip the Hollywoodified version that's going to get you to buy a ticket.
And here's the other thing too. I know there's a large group of people who are like, oh, I don't care about politics. That's so big to me. You are the sheep.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people who won't make the connection between this actually being real world. This isn't a cartoon. This isn't a what if. This is actually a really good look at humanity, and even though done through animals, of power and corruption.
Yeah. And I just don't like when people are completely politically void. Like they just don't know anything at all and don't care.
I'm always a believer of if you don't vote, you can't complain. You have to make a decision. You have to take a side. If you don't participate in the process, you keep your mouth shut because you didn't participate in the process.
Yeah, and don't be the sheep. Like, learn some politics. Like, don't get me wrong. I've got my side. I think it's pretty clear where it is. You don't have to be on my side. I hope you are, but you don't have to be. Just get knowledgeable, learn something, and figure out what works for you.
You know, you just said something that I think is really powerful in the fact that knowledgeable. Don't just pick a side because of where you live or what your mom and dad did or what your community does. Educate yourself, be knowledgeable about things, and from that point, make a decision. Now, if you're consuming biased information, you're going to come up with a biased decision. I personally, and I've mentioned this to you in the past, whenever there is a political race, whether it be president or governor, I watch the debates for both sides. I listen to what candidates on both sides say. And that's because I don't want my information to come through a funnel that just only supports me. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to be challenged. I want to know the facts. I don't want to know the filtered information from anybody. And
the primaries are the best ones. I love the primaries because then it's people within their party fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And then you get a better view, really, of what the problems are.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I agree. So,
but one thing I want to mention, and I know we're running long here, but I can't not.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Give this. So when I was in, I believe it was 10th grade, I was in a world history class, and our teacher was very much like, he liked political discussions and stuff like that. And I went to school in West Texas. Like, it's kind of described as the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. There's more churches per capita than like any city out there in the U.S. So, but we took a political ideology survey. It was something that
Who's we?
Everyone in the class.
Okay.
We were handed a piece of paper and told to answer the questions. And we were basically told, don't turn this in. This is for you.
Okay.
Like, we'll give you the grading key afterwards so you can total it up. And I did total everything up. And I ended up showing as slightly left of center. That doesn't fly for the Bible Belt. So I actually had to convince myself that no, I'm actually a conservative. This is what I support because this is what everyone around me supports. So, like, surely they're right. And it's don't assume the people around you are right, even if it's your parents, your family, anything. And
well, it's like kids in school, high school, and they'll actually say they support so and so, and all they're doing is mimicking the opinion of the influencers in their life, which are frequently their parents.
yeah,
I mean, sure, that you will have the Alex P. Keatons, obviously a dated Family Ties reference, who actually do follow politics and read and educate themselves. I'm not to say that there aren't folks out there, but yeah, the influence of our communities and the people that we know and trust is strong.
yeah, no, it very, very much is. So get informed for you, for your family, the things that are important to you, and like really challenge those views too. Like if you're for something or against something, be able to explain why you're for or against it, not just because. Well, because means you didn't think about it and you're just repeating whatever the hell you were told. So that's what I would challenge everyone to do. Like this is the overall thing that Orwell was trying to tell people, was understand history, learn from it, and have opinions. Be smarter about what it is that affects the world around you, and be that voice that promotes whatever your agenda is. And again, I may not agree with you on it, but if you've researched it and you can explain, I believe this way because of blank, 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 I'm going to respect you.
I don't think you have to promote what you believe in, but knowing what you believe in is enough. Like, you don't have to be an activist. You don't have to be screaming your opinions from the rooftop, but just don't be a sheep.
That's why we didn't have to turn in our tests for world history. Like, because you could be completely honest without other people. So yeah, you don't have to go out and promote if you don't want to.
And I hate that term and so many other terms are derogatory toward animals. Like, being called a sheep shouldn't be a negative. Sheep are pretty amazing. But yeah, have your own opinions. Don't just go along.
Don't be a lemming.
Yeah, there's tons of those. But yeah, have your own opinion. You don't have to be an advocate for it. You don't have to be an activist for it. But have your opinions that are formed on your own.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.